So I'm combining two papers here randomly just to give a little bit more information on what are the recent papers that are related to climate and human evolution that we've been looking at. This paper is on the genetic insights into social organization of Neanderthals. Genetic studies tend to have complicated techniques, so I'm not going to go into those details, but let's just read the abstract and add a few words to see what was done and what new findings have been reported. Genomic analysis of Neanderthals have previously provided insights into their population history and relationship to modern humans, but the social organization of Neanderthal communities remains poorly understood. Essentially, Neanderthal genes were found from very different places, different times, so you couldn't put together a narrative on their social organization. But here a set of genes are found together in a cave and a nearby cave, and they are related, so many conclusions can be made on the social organization of Neanderthals, which is very new. Here we present genetic data for 13 Neanderthals from two Middle Paleolithic sites in the Altai Mountains of southern Siberia, so that's about 50 to 60,000 years ago. 11 from Shagirskaya cave and 2 from Okladnikov cave. They are only about 100 kilometers apart. Okladnikov cave, making this one of the largest genetic studies of Neanderthal population to date. We used hybridization capture to obtain genome-wide nuclear data. Again, as I said, techniques that we will not get into, as well as mitochondrial and Y chromosome sequences. So mitochondrial DNA gives matrilineal inheritances, and Y chromosome tells you about how males were involved in the relationships of the people that lived in this little family or community. Some Chagirskaya individuals were closely related, including a father-daughter pair and a pair of second-degree relatives, indicating that at least some of the individuals lived at the same time. So the idea is to use the alleles and the Y chromosomes and mitochondrial DNAs to infer whether there was inbreeding and whether there were few men producing most of the kids, and whether women were contributing to genetic diversity in this little community. Okay. Up to 1/3 of these individuals' genomes had long segments of homozygosity, suggesting that the Chagirskaya Neanderthals were part of a small community. So homozygosity is where the alleles, so if you imagine the chromosome and they have pairs of chromosomes, pairs of genes coming from mother and father, could be genes for hair color, eye color, height, whatever you can imagine. So if they are the same, then it shows certain potential for inbreeding and so on, and relationships, so suggesting that Chagirskaya Neanderthals were part of a small community. In addition, the Y chromosome diversity is an order of magnitude lower than the mitochondrial diversity. A pattern that we found is best explained by female migration between communities. So men either produced all of the kids, so the diversity in Y chromosome was small, or mitochondrial diversity says that women were breeding by moving between the communities. Thus the genetic data presented here provides a detailed documentation of the social organization of an isolated Neanderthal community at the easternmost extent of their known range. So not a whole lot of details, but it at least tells you that they also lived in societies had relations going up to the grandfather level, for example. This technique doesn't allow you to go beyond second generation relations, but hopefully this is the beginning of finding other evidences to see how communities or families and societies of Neanderthals were organized. So let's just read their conclusion. We present genetic data from 13 Neanderthals, making this one of the largest genetic studies of a Neanderthal population. For the first time to our knowledge, we document familial relationships between Neanderthals, including a father and daughter pair. The high degree of homozygosity in all individuals is similar to what is seen in mountain gorillas, consistent with Neanderthals in the Altai living in small communities, which means there is inbreeding happening. Furthermore, based on the shorter average coalescent time for the Y chromosomes than for the mitochondrial DNA and shared mitochondrial DNA variance between the Chagarskaya and the Okladnikov individuals, we suggest that these small Neanderthal communities were predominantly linked by female migrations. So it could be some sort of marriage, and you go to the in-laws house, husband's house, and such. Our findings raise question as to whether the characteristics of the Altai communities are related to their isolated geographical location at the easternmost extremity of the known range of Neanderthals, especially because the population size at Vindija cave was probably larger. So that's from another reference. Or whether they are characteristic of Neanderthal communities more broadly. Okay, so you cannot conclude much just from one community, but still it gives you tantalizing hypothesis which can be tested by finding more data or when more data is found. Future studies should therefore, when possible, aim to sample multiple individuals from additional Neanderthal communities in other parts of Eurasia to shed further light on the social organization of our closest evolutionary relatives. As we know, Neanderthals have left their genetic imprint on all modern humans to various degrees depending on where we come from. So they are our closest relatives and potentially the last of our relatives to go extinct about 26,000 years or so ago, unless Homo floresiensis somehow had survived in Indonesia that we don't know about, but there is no genetic evidence of that anyways. So let me leave this short podcast here, but it's an interesting finding that I wanted to put here, and you can read the paper and look at the references in them to see how this cave was used by Neanderthals for many millennia based on other evidences, but this was a family that lived around the same time and was related to each other, and it was also related to the nearby cave through female migrations. Okay.